Chapter 7. The child lived in the world. Interface and journal tending. The point of interface. We all want more light. We all need and want the flow of light for our truth to be new, fresh, and effective. In this regard, Jesus said, "If you bring forth that within yourselves, that which you have will save you." So what do? It is confoundingly simple. We reach out to the child within us. We talk to the child we know is there. We do this initially by means of our journal, and later by writing and talking to the rest of ourself, the child out there in time and space. We write to the child I am with simple words in our private journal, exactly as we would talk to God. The child of us is the God of us, and is our connection, our interface with Godhead, mountain beyond name. The child is also our interface with the entire tangible universe, Shan. It is as if the real of us, the child, holds God's hand with one hand and holds the world's hand with the other. We stand precisely in the middle between these two that are one, Godhead and Man. The child is the third, the Logos. These are the three that are one. Listen gently about the place of interface. When one plays the piano, the point of interface between the player and the sounded music is exactly where his fingers touch the keys. The surface of the keys is the place where the inner music of the soul becomes the outer melody in the living room or concert hall. There is no space between the fingers and the keys, just as there is no space between the child of us and our fingers as we write. The child soul of us is where the melody is first heard. If one is a composer, the point of interface between the melody heard within and the melody the world hears without is also at the tips of the composer's fingers, as he plays and as he writes those notes onto a piece of paper. So the interface is where the inside becomes the outside, and where, as we listen, the outside becomes inside. In the book of Thomas, we hear Jesus say, "When you make the two one, and when you make the inner as the outer, and the outer as the inner, then shall you enter the kingdom." When one writes a letter or a book, the point of interface between the reader and the writer is the tip of the writer's fingers and his heart, and the eyes that read and the reader's heart. There is no real space between the eyes, the heart, and the tips of the fingers. When the writer gets the fingers to state the child's heart's feeling, the interface is completed, heart to heart. As I sit here writing these words at Woodsong's study desk, piled high with books, papers, and letters, the point of interface between the child heart I am and the entire world of time's tangibility is the keyboard of the good Rabbi Moses Goldberg, the typewriter. The child heart of me touches God on the one side and the world of time on the other. Reading these words, the reader goes straight to the writer's heart, to his own simultaneously. As you will see very plainly in the days ahead, there is only one heart, one child, one God. It is the same for all of us. Disney World. I visit Disneyland at every opportunity. It is a wonderful place to go. There is no questioning the delight and enchantment there. Few enter the magic kingdom without feeling the child heart within. I think my favorite time of day at Disneyland is in the evening when California's golden sun has set and the street lights of the village are beginning to twinkle and sparkle everywhere. I've learned the best place to sit at that time of day is at the Main Street Railroad Station. From the big wooden benches that overlook the city square, one looks down on the magic. Tired and happy people are strolling below, looking, laughing, smiling, and heading reluctantly for the gates. Viewing all that wonder and happiness, I am reminded that it all began when a man took a pencil in hand and let an image inside flow outside onto the paper. The image of a mouse he called Mickey. If ever one wanted to see the tangible outside become like the inside, let him look and see the child heart of Walt Disney made tangible, so everyone can see it and exult. The dream began in the heart of the child man, but the tangible Disneyland in time and space began at the point of the pencil. As I write this, I am there. Such is the magic within us. The direct route to the child within. Certainly, the most direct route to the child of us is to pay attention to our words and thoughts. We do that best by actually looking at some of those thoughts we have written. Just as there is magic when the audience listens to the sounds in the concert hall, the child's interface with the world, so there is tremendous magic when, listen carefully, as we turn the process around to discover the child and its interface with reality. Metaphysics and religion, as they have developed in the world, have been woefully inadequate in showing us how to make this turnaround. There is as much doing in this inner reversal as in its outer expression. Wing and the music of the Rhomboids. Han told the story of Wing, the famous musician of Shan. Wing's music was known throughout the world. To reward him, God allowed Wing to hear the sacred music of the Rhomboids for 3 entire evenings, a melody so enchanting it brought the fields and meadows alive and caused the trees to dance. But Wing didn't write the melody while he still remembered it. He felt certain he could never forget such a wonderful song. But before Wing could write the song onto parchment, it had flown from his head. When the king asked why he had not written it before it was forgotten, Wing replied, "Everything is in my head. The whole world is within this awareness I am, so it really isn't necessary to write anything." The king had Wing's head chopped off. The cynics said, "The world was in Wing's head, and now Wing's head is in the world." If Wing had made the effort to write the insight, it could have been heard by everyone, said Han. Yes, we write our insights before they are forgotten. Then we live them. Then we tell them to others who see us living them. Why journal tending? I don't like to write, Sam. It is difficult for me. I write rotten letters, and I don't have the time to learn how to write well. I'd rather read. Why do you stress journal tending so? One doesn't have to write well to keep a journal of his thoughts, of his glimpses and glimmers. No one is going to read it but the journal tender himself. When one understands the secret of spiritual input and output, and few do, he realizes that writing well isn't important, but the mode of mentation, that writing requires is important, and once one is comfortable with the mode, he can maintain it, whether he is writing or not. Journal tending is fundamental. Writing is a discipline that engages and utilizes the flow of life. It is the flow from the ineffable through consciousness out into tangible words that does the good work for us in the world, not necessarily what is written. The flow is the thing we want to get going again. The flow completes the interface, top to bottom, inside and out. The flow is interrupted when one stops living the equation. The flow is the interfacing equation in operation. We are living while we are completing the flow. We are dying when we are not living the flow. We interrupt the flow of energy individually and in quantum, and there is a corresponding increase of stored deadly energy to confirm the interruption. One doesn't have to look far to find the negative confirmation of his own indolence. We interrupt the flow of light and life, the divine energy, and we see a confirming accumulation of fat, poverty, cells gone amok, fear, starvation in the world, and all else appearing negatively in our affairs. We become conscious of the flow again, living it to the best of our ability, and the flow gives us the most wonderful things to see, feel, and write about. Writing our glimpses of good is a sure and certain action that sparks the flow of light and life in our subjective world. Inside, outside, outside, inside, the child's interface. Nothing, absolutely nothing, is more important than the following. In all existence, there is a flow involved. Be gentle with yourself and remember the flow of old. What was it? When we were children, we interfaced with God and the world freely. Our imagination flowed without restraint into the world of people, places, and things. By the same token, the world of people and things flowed freely into the child. We saw a frog outside, and presto, the imagination was off and running. Or we thought of kings and queens inside, and immediately the people walking up the street outside became part of the royal court. Both sides. Adulthood has woven a veil that hangs between the child heart and the world. The world outside has become the adult's reality bound in time. The free-flowing exchange from inside to outside, outside to inside, has been interrupted and insulated by the unconscionable bastard we insist on being in linear time. Just as a stopped-up kitchen sink needs to flow again, it is necessary for us to regain the flow. Outside, inside, inside, outside, freely moving again. Examining one's own thoughts is the necessary first step. And, make no mistake, it is necessary. The child thinks differently than the old man, as you are feeling already while the child comes alive in your experience. Of course, writing is not the only way to examine one's thoughts and thinking, but it is the most immediate way to do it by oneself. In human history, the breakthroughs to great dimensions have inevitably occurred with writing playing a major part in the process. From the ancient forest wanderers to these final days of this civilization, as physicists sit pondering their equations. The historic Jesus may have written only in the sand, but who can dispute he caused much to be written? So we do this writing for ourself alone, without an intermediary between ourself and God. Who stands between the thinking and the thought but ourself? In the end, all the words being spoken and written in the name of truth are as nothing compared to our own experienced interface with reality, inside and out. The instant a word of our own is written on the paper before us, our tangible scene has been altered, moved toward darkness or light, for better or worse, by that written and spoken word. If we keep the flow passing between the heart and the fingers that touch the world, the old bastard's barrier becomes less opaque, and our experience in the world starts improving. As the child of us shows us our birthright atop the Shan, and we're quickly on our way the moment we take a pen in hand, the climbing adult diminishes. The child increases in consciousness more and more, until atop the mighty mountain of Kwang-se, naught remains but the true identity, the child I am. Despite all you have heard elsewhere, there is no way there short of finding and living the child that is there and everywhere. There are no shortcuts. No church can take us there. No doctrine can do it for us. We may lay metaphysical claim to our heritage until the jade eggs of Dashan hatch, but we don't receive that heritage until we become the child in conscious, living action. Intellectualism has its place, but it doesn't take us home. The child's conscious return to the peak of the mountain is accomplished in living fact before one gets off the temporal world's wheel of trials, tribulations, beginnings and endings, time and rebirth. Letter to a friend. Thank you for the call, dear friend Zeke. Jeremiah spoke of the mystery as arriving line upon line, a reference to the last letter of the old Hebrew alphabet, which came to be believed to have special power. He added precept upon precept. It has come that way for me, Zeke. I do not believe it comes to anyone otherwise. There may be road to Damascus enlightenments, but those events are not understood or confirmed quickly. Understanding comes precept upon precept. Yours will come more quickly now because you are willing to get the veil out of the way and to do what you will be given to do. Listen carefully. Get yourself a notebook and begin a journal. There is a flow from the ineffable beyond name into our conscious, unconscious awareness, and from there into tangibility. We move into that flow as we clothe our glimpse with words. That flow is continual, constant, ever flowing, from non-movement into tangibility and the world's movement. The purpose of the journal is to consciously become the very point where the ineffable becomes tangible in the world. That is, to unlock the flow and allow it to move through our conscious awareness again, just as it did when we were children. This is not a religious approach, Zeke, because the flow of glimpses from Godhead pertains to everything, good, true, and wonderful. Beauty, wonder, form, color, tenderness, the fragrances of flowers, the beauty of children and mountains and June bugs, excitement, enthusiasm, feelings of love and awe, and especially memories of the grand events of our lives that are all part of the flow. Mark a section of your journal glimpses and begin making a list of all the notable glimpses you have had in your life. Glimpses of what? Nothing complex here. Just think back and remember the joyful, moving, significant moments. When you first fell in love, when you got your first bicycle, and any of those special, meaningful events you remember. List them. It isn't necessary to write in detail about them. At this time, just list them, such as, here are some of mine: military school and homesickness, the little girl Barbara, the picnic and the cow's soulful eyes, the man screaming in the church, walking to meet Mom in the evening. Go back to your childhood, Zeke, and recall all events that stick in your mind for any reason, painful or otherwise, because their sticking in memory is evidence they taught you something. You may omit the most painful ones if you like, but be certain to list the good ones. What they taught isn't important right now. You are just making a list of the powerful moments in your early days. At the moment, it seems I'm asking you to recall memories, and in a way I am, but we'll call them glimpses later, as you will see. This is a meaningful exercise, Zeke. Just do it. Pay particular attention to the sensations, feelings, moods, and memories that come. And know this: as those things come into consciousness, something very healing to the body is coming with them. Will you do this, Zeke? Set up a specific time, early in the morning, and again in the afternoon or evening, each day. Not long. You set the time, 10 or 15 minutes minimum. Some days, when the flow is really coming, stay with it. In a year or two, for you, how about a month or two? You will be surprised and delighted to find that the flow is constant and that you can actually do what the prophet said. Whatsoever things are good and true, think on these things. You have just begun, I assure you. That child lives, Zeke. Everything you felt as a kid, you can and will feel again. Prove me now herewith. The child within will lead you to all things else. Then you will have the opportunity to do the same for many others, even as now I do for you. Hang in there, man. We have a lot to do for our world. The mode. I can't remember when or why I began using the term journal tending, because it really isn't that. It is more a jotting down of thoughts as they come, or an examination of one's own thinking. It is very often a conversation between me-sense and the self within. For many years, my journal was a shirt pocket and a dresser drawer. Whatever words, phrases, or sentences came were jotted onto whatever was handy. Old envelopes, receipts, grocery bags. These bits and pieces were emptied into a drawer each day, and it was many years before the activity was even half organized. The reader, however, is not being asked to do an effortless thing either. It does take time and a small effort to sit down and ask God a question, and then to be still and listen for an answer. When we talk to friends, some slight, momentary attention is necessary to select the right words to describe the antics of our dog romping in the autumn leaves just raked. But we do that almost effortlessly. No more effort than this is required for keeping a journal, as I propose doing it. Just remember, it isn't what we write that matters half so much as the mode we put ourselves into as we write. Writing may be a discipline most of us don't enjoy because we can't write as easily as we can talk. And we are afraid to look at our results. But writing is invaluable because of the receptiveness it engenders. But, my friend, if you will take my word for it, at the moment, you will quickly find yourself with a remarkable something to do that will lead you straight to the child heart of yourself. Through the years, many have told me that writing was the last thing they would ever do. On my desk this moment there is a letter saying, "If writing is required to discover the truth, I'll never know the truth." Yet, I've seen those very people becoming living lights in the world, some of them publishing books. Not everyone who keeps a journal will write to the world, yet not a single one who writes a word, even a word on the back of an envelope, can keep from changing his experience by that very word. There is a mystical truth in the saying about the web of interrelatedness. When a leaf falls to the earth, the universe is shaken. Just so, when one writes a single word, the universe is shaken. That is a fact which I will prove momentarily. To this point in the book, we have talked about number 1, the child within, number 2, the power of glimpses, and number 3, journal tending. The journal has been introduced early because we will use it to get back to the essential child and its glimpses, without which one is not living. Let me repeat. The power of the journal doesn't lie in the words written in it, but in the mode of consciousness one falls into as he writes. That mode of mentation takes us to the child, and the child brings us the glimpses. We smash the barrier between the old man and the child. It is essential that we make a conscious connection with the child. Why? Because the child interfaces with God. Imperceptibly, we let go the we and become the child. To the utter amazement of ourselves, bit by bit, we let go the ego climber and its fictitious interface with God and the world. This doesn't happen overnight, but once we know we are looking for the very child of ourself, the pace quickens dramatically. There isn't a person in the world who can't begin this marvelous transformation at once. We come face to face with the child and are transfigured. Never mind what seems to be going on with the physical body, its age and condition. The transformation is a marvel, not unlike the butterfly's emergence into the light of day after its dark night in the binding cocoon. The child's interface with the real world is no less dramatic than the butterfly's view transcending the blind worm on the quaking leaf. It is infinitely more beautiful and fulfilling than the old man's counterfeit connection with his world. The material world is seen for the insubstantial image of image it is. The material world is also perceived for the purpose it serves, to confirm God's allness. When the child is finally found again, we become aware for the first time in our lives that the interruption wasn't and isn't bad, no matter how terrible the human picture. And we find that the human saga is a wonderful, necessary part of the plan. Nothing about the human experience has been happenstance or outside the perfect plan of the One. About the unreal nature of matter. Strangely, for all our professings the unreality of matter, seekers of truth are often the last to understand this tangible world which is subjectively within us, flowing out of us, so to speak. Religious objectivism, metaphysical subjectivism, and human science would shake the gates of heaven to understand why matter seems so persistently real despite its holographic nature. But without the child within, no one can solve this problem. The child's mysterious balance and equation allows us to understand. There is a parable of a woman carrying a jar of meal on her back, and when she gets home, the meal has leaked away and the jar is empty. Meaning, the weight of the world, the monkey on the back, the human values, have imperceptibly slipped away to be replaced with knowing. Action, not study. We start our journal and begin the conscious interface with the child immediately. We don't read about truth forever as though it is perceived intellectually by sitting with a book in our hand. The return to the child, to feel the child, is an actual doing which we can and must experience for ourselves. Our correspondence with one who has found a measure of the child of himself can be marvelously helpful. The words of this book must now go beyond the discovery of identity to the child's declarations and revelations themselves. But the reader should understand that all that follows from this point in this book and in one's life necessarily has two sets of interpretations. The first is made by the old nature of us, the climber struggling to find identity. The second is the interpretation and meaning the child heart of us within hears and responds to. The interpretation lived in the world whisks us up the mountain. Often, the heart hears first, followed by the old nature's intrusion, trying to understand, and then, when it can't, strewing doubt and confusion, frequently with a battery of intellectual obfuscation. For this reason, multiple readings have always been necessary with literature that speaks to the real of us. As we comprehend the child and its instructions, we are making real progress for the first time since our discovery of truth. Increasing sensibilities and a warning. Finally, there is another matter the reader must understand concerning the discovery of the child. As the child's leadership becomes real to us, there comes a remarkable, sometimes astonishing, return of sensitivity. Line upon line, precept upon precept, we begin to feel again. And for many of us, it will be the first time in years we've felt so clearly and strongly about anything. You are likely feeling some of this increase now already. An important word of caution here. The delights of this returning sensitivity can be, and will try to be, as heady and misleading as were our involvements with the world. Many years ago, I knew a lady who found the child of herself. She mistook her new sensitivity to be an increasing libido and went charging down the world's road with that tiger by the tail. At this stage of our search, we shouldn't need to be told how powerful, broad, and deceiving that trip of sensualism is. We must not be swept aside or off the mountain's edge because of the grand increases of feeling that come with the child and its new vista. Not just sensual feelings, but all the sensations of unbound youth. The equation about which we are writing, a little here and a little there, allows us to hold the body's sensualism in perspective so that we are no longer led by the nose of unchecked passion. Without the equation lived, this heightened sensitivity can carry the climber in the wrong direction. Further, let it be understood that we cannot live the child's equation for the purpose of increasing sensualism. That is, to gratify the senses with the pleasures of the world. That attempt meets with utter failure and brings us to a rude comeuppance. What selfish human intention gains, that same intention destroys, and more. What the old nature gains by selfish design is taken from it. Nothing from nothing, a state more miserable than before. The old nature is surrendered and given up as the child leads to the high view. We surrender it willingly before the child puts us atop the Shan. Those who persist in their search for truth will find the new vistas infinitely more wonderful than all that has been surrendered along the way. There must be no misunderstanding here. There is no way to hold to the human pleasures of the old man's linear world while acquiring those of the child's. Strangely, it takes metaphysicians longer to understand this than it takes ordinary folks. The child's new world includes the lesser worlds to infinity. In the end, we have lost nothing but illusion and its deceit, but we have found identity and gained dominion. Therefore, we don't hold back in the human scheme of things. Unlike Ananias and Sapphira, we are willing to let go everything concerning the old nature. What comes with the higher view is infinitely more. A weighty puff. He talks about a growing sensitivity, says Mary. Yes, Lee replied, our sensitivity returns. But I'm too sensitive now. I'm not sure I want that. Oh, well, he means the good things, Lee said, touching her hand. We settle into a balance first, where the old sensitivities go away, our fears and dreads, our dislikes and terrors, leaving us. Then, out of the balance comes a return to the feelings we held as children, before we were programmed and desensitized. Mary sat pensively. What kind of feelings return? She asked hesitantly. Little things we've forgotten about. A smile covered Lee's face. I began to smell the grass again as I did when I was a boy. Very little things began to excite me again, like the sight of a deer at the forest's edge or a butterfly circling my head. Even my holly berries became red again. And you found joy in those things? The troubled lady asked incredulously. Yes, yes, and you will too. Watch and see. Dear God, I hope so, Mary sighed. A journal entry. A jay crying in the cold. There is something new to see every day, something to be learned, and sometimes it can be very wonderful. Awareness exploring the infinity of life, as old friend Alfred used to say. There is no end in this exploration of infinite being or to the joy it brings. A jay came to the feeder in the holly bush a few minutes ago on this very cold January morning atop the hill. He let out his piercing screech to warn away others who would dare intrude on his private stash of midwinter goodies. Screech? Squawk? He shrieked, not 10 feet away from the keyboard of my typewriter tucked warmly behind the steady window overlooking the holly bush. I looked up, as who wouldn't, just in time to see a backlit, top-knotted jay's head discharge its noise. With each squawk came a big puff of steam. Now, in all these years of bird loving and watching, I've never seen their tiny breath. Somehow, the thought of it never came to mind, or I didn't notice, believing their breathing was such a small affair, it couldn't or wouldn't be seen by anyone but the bird. This morning, I've learned that a jaybird can huff and puff billows of steam on a cold morning with the best of them, and one can see it plain as day if he is situated just right. Sun behind a holly bush and sunflower seed in the feeder. Well now, who would have thought that the sight of a tiny puff of breath would elicit a paragraph in my journal, filled as it is with weighty matters? That puff of steam is the weighty matter for this day. That was a rare sight, I'll tell you, like one more tiny, handcrafted arrowhead for my collection of memories. Precept upon precept, our insights come, breath upon breath, in an endless line of blessings. Thank you, angels, for this breath of another day. Woodsong on the Hill. How quickly do we find the child? How to write this with the gravity necessary? Let the heart hear this. The very moment we become conscious we are the child, in actuality, that moment we are in touch with the divine. The conscious interface has begun. The child speaks to us of high things immediately, and we become conscious of them. We write as we go along, examining our thoughts.